Good morning again. My name is Pam Tipton, and I'm Director of Custom Programs here at Goizueta Business School as part of our executive education team. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. This is our last Business Over Breakfast for 2022, and we're so glad you're spending your morning with us. And as we approach the holidays, we wish warm wishes to you and your family. So today, we're going to take a look back at the trends that have impacted our work and lives in 2022. And time permitting, we'll dip our toe into the water of what's looking ahead. And I know some of our roundtable panelists have already planned to talk about some of that. In the global economy, most of the world's big banks waited until March to begin ratcheting up interest rates in hopes of shifting out economic speed. So, can the Fed really keep the U.S. economy from recession? And what else has happened in 2022? So the US dollar soared, crypto imploded, and Elon Musk bought Twitter, much to many folks' chagrin. And of course, he's shaken it up so much, it's just about to fall apart itself. The Great Resignation is a movement with more momentum than we would prefer and has actually coined a new phrase. And the people you're most hoping to retain in many cases are already have their foot out the door. All kinds of people are really leaving steady jobs. One study found that as many as 95% of workers would really consider a job change. And that's a pretty frightening statistic. And I know we've all been impacted by that. However, the most important trends are likely to focus around the convergence of technology trends, the tools that emerge that let us combine information and capabilities in new and, quite frankly, amazing ways. During this session, we're going to recap those biggest trends and dig into why they mattered. And we are so pleased to welcome our esteemed roundtable panel to the webinar this morning to give us this year in review. Our moderator, as well as our entrepreneurial corporate innovation expert, is Amelia Schaffner. Following a turn as senior strategy principal at Accenture, Amelia co-founded Goizueta Business School's Center for Innovation and Entrepreneurship, and she's currently on a much-needed sabbatical to explore what I see as her insatiable appetite to learn and grow. And we are so sad that she is returning to her native Italy this summer, but we are so grateful to have Amelia back with us this morning. To our roundtable panelists, we have Bill McKinnon, CEO of Capitalytics and affiliate data analytics faculty in Goizueta's recently launched Masters of Analytical Finance. An economist and serial entrepreneur, Bill brings more than 30 years of experience to the table with insights from partnering with multiple industries. Julie Smith, our HR expert, president of Custom HR Resource Solutions, a multi-state HR consulting firm based here in Atlanta, recognized as a human resource expert and featured in media, including CNN and NPR. Julie has been practicing human resources and HR consulting for more than 30 years. So you see, we've got tons of experience on this panel this morning. And last, but certainly not least, our distinguished Ben Kaczynski and our technology expert guru and futurist, chaired professor of information systems and operations management at Goizueta. Ben expands the minds of our MBA and executive students by exploring the interconnectedness and possibilities that technology enables. His students are affectionately known as SOBs. That would be students of Ben. So during this session, we'll spend about 35 minutes with our roundtable experts and integrate Q&A as we go along, but we'll also reserve some time at the end. So please find the Q&A box on your Zoom toolbar and enter your questions there, and we'll try to get to many of those as possible. And for those who prefer to enable it or need to enable it, we have enabled closed captions for individual enablement. So post a chat to the panelists if you need some assistance with that. Enjoy your time with Amelia, Bill, Julie, and Ben. And we look so forward to seeing you in the new year. Amelia, over to you.
Great. Thank you, Pam. That was a wonderful run through all the fun facts of this year. So pretty exciting year, pretty wild year, and we have a lot to cover. So just quick introduction on how we're going to run through this session. Obviously, when we got together and discussed how are we going to boil down the ocean for a year in review, we had to narrow it down to a few macro general areas. So we narrowed it down to these four macro areas of the economy, the work and talent area, the technology shifts, and the general new corporate reality. So we're going to then, for each one of those sections, kind of look a little bit about what is true, what's maybe more of a myth, and of course, get into dialogue and interactive conversations with all of you. We're going to start off with Bill, who is going to help us cover the economy. He's going to cover a little bit of where we are, just the general sort of indicators and so on. Bill, to you.
Thank you, Amelia. Appreciate that. And thank you, Pam, and everyone else for joining us this morning. In terms of where we started 2022, we go back to 2020 and 2021. There was more than $2 trillion in savings, both corporate and personal, that had been generated as a result of the COVID stimulus programs that had been started in the previous 2 years. And as a result of that, as well as people changing their lifestyles and spending so much time at home, either working or trying to find work, we ended up in a situation this year in which there was too much money running around trying to chase too few goods. The rest of the world was still experiencing supply chain issues. Shipping and logistics was just getting onto its feet. And even now, I'm sure everybody here has experienced or is still experiencing problems with getting that Christmas present from Amazon. As a result of the money glut, easy money glut, we've seen rising prices, especially in gasoline, energy, and food, some of which, or a lot of which, has been caused as a result of the Russian invasion of Ukraine. In terms of that, the FOMC, the Fed, has been trying to combat inflation and slow down spending by raising interest rates, capping that off with just yesterday, Chairman Powell announcing a new 50 basis point increase in overnight lending rates between banks, which is going to trickle down to their other products for sure, as well as, not to set up Julie too much, but has also caused a number of corporations to announce that they're going to be instituting reductions in force across the board. Most notably, the technology space has been announcing cuts in manpower with a fervor, given their investments over the past couple of years in order to enable the work from home scenario. In addition, we've seen housing prices on a roller coaster. Right now, it seems like they're on their way down. Inventory is still low, but increasing. And of course, depending on what's going on in your part of the world, you may see a slightly different circumstances from folks in Atlanta or even in the Southeast. Job openings, the number of jobs that folks for several years were purporting to have available have been decreasing this year. They're off about 10% from close to double what their normal rate was. And we've also seen a very gradual increase in manpower availability, but there's still a dramatic deficit in terms of the number of people in the labor pool. The main things that have been contributing to that have been people who decided to retire early, as well as younger and less trained people essentially exiting the workforce. So those are essentially the big picture issues that have been going on in the economy. As Pam mentioned, yes, there are other issues, but in terms of the big drivers, let's start with that, and with that, turn it over to Julie and see where the conversation takes us.
And Bill, before we get over to Julie, just a quick question on, as we're seeing this global sort of economy and the impacts it's had over, the last years. Can you talk a little bit about maybe just like a quick question on how we're seeing globalization versus localization? So that general trend, where are we?
Well, it's a little bit of a mixed bag. A lot of companies have actually been re-entrenching and taking a more controlling position in their supply chains and wanting to bring more production back closer to headquarters, if you will. Obviously, there are certain industries where that's not feasible. But just as one example to the nationalistic view has been the federal government's push to bring semiconductors back home in order to deal with the automobile dilemma or crisis, if you will, and the fact that we haven't been able, or manufacturers haven't been able to generate their products in the automotive space reliably for the past couple of years. So generally, there is a push to contract from globalization, to bring production back domestically, or at least not be so reliant on international shipping, and to find creative ways in order to potentially mitigate those types of stresses. That's a good point, and what that essentially means is there's going to be more investment in U.S. production. The question is, how quickly is that going to be able to be put into place in order to provide jobs? And that's a big open issue, particularly in big sectors that require significant capital investments like silicon.
Thank you, Bill. And we actually have a question from the audience. Gary is asking if you can share the findings of the impact of the economy on family life.
I want to hold off on that a little bit, if you don't mind. But we're seeing a split response. Essentially following the K recovery that was publicized significantly in 2021. The K recovery was the phenomenon in which we saw essentially those who were well off doing better during the COVID recovery, and unfortunately those who weren't well off not doing as well or continuing to tumble in the socioeconomic strata. People who were doing well and who were able to take advantage of work from home opportunities probably have experienced an enhancement in family life, but those who have not, well, one of two things have happened. They've either had to look harder in order to find employment, or, like I mentioned earlier, a significant percentage of them have essentially punched out of the economy. Right now, the labor force participation rate is running about 1 to 2 points lower than it was pre-COVID. And that, I think, emphasizes the number of people who have essentially pushed back and are not trying to find themselves productive work these days.
Thank you very much, Bill. I know we have a lot of conversation topics, and we'll definitely, please, for the audience, please keep asking questions as we go through these segments, but we will have a chance for everybody sort of to ask more questions towards the end. One last question on this particular topic, and then we'll move on to work and talent. How is the economic trends impacting entrepreneurship and small business?
So you probably remember during 2020, a lot of people were experimenting and trying new things. They decided they wanted to, if they couldn't work from home, they wanted to try new opportunities in order to become entrepreneurs. I think in one of our previous Business Over Breakfasts, Tom Smith and I showed that during 2021, there was something of an excess of 5 million corporate licenses that were issued across the nation. So entrepreneurialism is alive and well. However, the question is, since that time, have those businesses been able to retain their customer pool? A lot of people started businesses working from home, and their primary client was, I suspect, their previous employer, who decided they wanted to have contractors rather than full-time employees on the books. So that's great. Now, as a business owner, can you build your business in order to be able to generate enough revenue in order to make it a going concern? can you build your customer base beyond that of one customer? And that's one of the things that's been experiencing a significant problem over the past several months. We've noticed a lot of businesses that have been shuttering. Now, given the economic circumstances, it's going to be interesting to see if entrepreneurialism is able to kick it up a notch in order to provide income and revenue to people who otherwise may not have employment.
Great. Thank you so much, Bill. I know we can talk a lot about this. I want to give a chance also for us to go into the talent. There's a lot of intersecting section in this. So we will definitely cover more on the entrepreneurial thing also later. So I'll pass on the word now to Jill. And Jill will cover a little bit of where we are with the labor, talent, HR scenarios, and so on. So Julie, on to you.
Thank you, Amelia, and thank you everyone for joining. Before I hit on my bullet points, I work directly with medium-sized businesses and small businesses across the country. So a lot of what Bill was saying, I'm experiencing with our clients. I would say the biggest change or the biggest impact that we saw in 2022 had to do with changes with attitudes, employee attitudes towards the workplace, which then requires changes from managers and employers. It's completely changing the business model, and that is still going on. So the post-pandemic attitudes, people have spent 2 years at home, working remotely, and they have relationships with their pets and they have spent time with their children. And now, in many situations, they're being asked to come back to a brick and mortar office. And that's presenting its own challenges, like the lifestyle, it has changed for them. The other, significant area that we can look at for 2022 is diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. We've all heard the terms DE and I. It's now DEI and B. Belonging has basically been added to that acronym. And workplaces are redesigning their vision, their culture, so that they're paying more attention to these things. And then 2 new terms, I know Pam mentioned this in the beginning when she did her intro. The 2 new terms that were introduced is quiet quitting and WFA, which is work from anywhere. We've all heard the work from home, there's work from home policies. And even before COVID, there were work from home policies. And now it's work from anywhere. And what we're seeing is that workers are taking, like Amelia's on her sabbatical. I mean, they're taking 6 months of their work year and traveling all over Europe while they work remotely. And so, opportunities like that, if employers can offer those types of opportunities, it really makes the talent challenge a little bit less challenging. So we're seeing recession, fear-based labor and cost reductions. And so we just actually worked with a client of ours who is doing a layoff because of the pending recession, the forecast. So they're not experiencing these financial, issues or cost reduction needs yet, but they're trying to prepare in advance. And so we're seeing that more from smaller to medium-sized companies. Many of the larger corporations are already doing layoffs, as Bill had mentioned as well. So, and one of the things I wanted to just point out is, in this fiction area, there's a shortage in the labor market. So there are a lot of things that a company can do and managers can do to attract and retain talent. So, it's been mentioned that, there's a high percentage of employees who have said they're willing to leave their jobs, or they're thinking about leaving their jobs, switching jobs. Well, if they switch jobs, they're going to go somewhere. So typically, at least generally, employees don't just leave the workplace. They leave one job and go to another job, and they're leaving leaders. They're not leaving companies per se. And so there are a lot of interesting opportunities for employers and for managers to reevaluate the entire workplace, like how we're interacting with employees. And the soft skills are far more important than they were pre-COVID. And we saw the rise in that in 2022. So, and the other issues that, generally we're seeing that employees don't want to return to the workplace. And we're seeing that, with our small and medium-sized clients that we work with. But there are some employees who are more effective when they're interacting with others, and maybe they have distractions in their home environment, and it's difficult to work at home, and they want a fixed office to go to, somewhere to go. And then, compensation and benefits are top of mind for workers, and that's not exactly true. Workers are looking for meaningful work. They're looking for to work for an employer that stands for something. So those are, really important components in redesigning cultures and looking at cultures. And we're also seeing, huge increases in technology as it relates to workers. So when we talk about AI and just different technology that handles the information related to onboarding and, every aspect of human resources, it creates experiences, positive experiences, not just for employees and candidates, but for managers, your HR team. And AI is everywhere. And so if it's not incorporated into your business model and into how you're handling employees and recruiting talent, then it really lowers the ranking, the attractability of a company to a candidate. And there's competition out there for the good candidates.
And thank you, Julie. Just a few sort of clarifications that are coming in from the audience. Wanted to understand a little bit, what are you seeing in terms of the hiring, both what's happened throughout this year and what's happening sort of next year? How is demographic hiring changing and whatnot? So a couple of questions are asking a bit of predictions, obviously, for what the market is going to look like in terms of talent next year, but also in terms of what is including, what is excluding, what is being focused on race. One question was, are you also seeing that race is included as part of the table of stakes with DEIB? And then the other question is, are companies also considering hiring employees from all over the world to work remotely, or just US employees that are trying to live all over the world? Because the talent pool could be open significantly. So
yes, and that's a loaded 7 questions. So just to focus on or at least first to address where employers are getting their talent. So they are absolutely able to hire. It used to be we were hiring people within commutable distance. And I do remember, like, they have to live within 20 miles of, the brick and mortar office. And that's not the case anymore. So we're hiring people that are, in different states, but also in different countries. And so it depends on the type of job, the type of work, if the time zone matters, and how well the company is set up for communication. So when we're doing Zoom meetings, if there's a time difference that is significant, then that might make it challenging to create the group interaction. But there's technology for that as well. And so we're absolutely seeing that. And in terms of DE&I, it's across the board. So we have more and more companies who are interested in equity surveys, equity studies within their organizations, where we're identifying not just, age versus race versus religion, those types of things, but also how employees feel about their own inclusion, and how they feel about the company's approach to, gender differences, things like that. And so it gives us an idea of not just what the data says, but what are the feelings about it. And I think, and they're making changes. Companies are making changes. If you're if you're a manager and you have a policy or practice, to have a workforce that is an equal opportunity workforce where, everyone is treated equally, and you have diversity. If your employees don't feel like, if it's not disseminating appropriately, if the message isn't getting out, then the policy has no value. And so I think that's important. Did I answer all the questions?
Yeah, that was a lot in a handful. Thank you, Julie. I think there's more pouring in this whole section. So one interesting question, is it fact or myth, basically, that are the wages declining? If there's such a high demand, supposedly, why are we seeing these wage reductions, basically?
So we're not necessarily seeing wage reductions. We're seeing, it's termed real wages. So when you take the somebody's compensation, we're seeing increases in wages about 4%, average 3.9, 4.1% increase, from one year to the next. But because inflation is so much higher, it doesn't have the same kind of impact. And so net, it's a reduction because the cost of goods and services, is still high. And so that, that makes a big difference. We're doing a lot of compensation studies. We're looking at the market. We're looking at, opportunity costs for an employee. If they left your job, the job that they're in now, to go take the same job down the street with a similar company, would they be able to earn more money? And what we're finding, and this was in 2022, we were finding between 15 and 25% increases in the earnings potential from 2019 to 2022. I mean, there's a big hike, and we have some clients who did 25% across the board rate increases, and it still didn't put them where they needed to be to deal with the rising costs of goods and services. So, and when we talk about like getting creative, like if you're an employer or manager and you want to recruit the best talent and you want to keep them, these are areas like, wage increases and how it impacts the economy, or how it, levels up with the economy and with inflation. What are benefits that you can implement? Like, how can you help employees with those types of costs? And some of them that come up are, we're seeing maternity leave for pet rescue. So if you rescue a pet, you adopt a pet through a rescue, that you get paid leave to bond with that pet.
Yeah,
we're seeing childcare expenses reimbursed. We're seeing a number of gas cards and help with groceries, help with student loans, and these are things that make an impact with employees.
Thank you, Julie. I know you have some more questions in the chat, so it'd be helpful if you can pop in. In the meanwhile, I know in the interest of time, we're going to shift over to Ben and talk a little bit about the technology shifts. Again, all of this is a lot of intersection, and we will definitely roll at the end more questions. So Ben, on to you for the technology shifts part.
Yeah, great. Thank you. Bill and Julie have given some great perspectives from their lenses going forward. Certainly the year 2022 has been very critical from a technology standpoint in terms of discontinuities and pivots ongoing as well. And so we want to remark on a few of those things and how they portend future transitions and future momentums, and also declines as well. When we crossed a milestone in 2022 with 8 billion people on the earth, and 4 billion of those people have smart edge devices of some kind that are a part of their day-to-day life, and the other half are rapidly approaching and reaching for accessibility of technologies at the edge. At the same time, we have 4 billion people with intelligent devices at the edge. You have over 40, 50 billion things that are now a part of the technology ecosystem that either are intelligent or can gain intelligence and sensory experience that might be a part of the ecosystem of commerce and society in different parts of the world as well. In the United States, about half most of the households have about 12 devices or mechanisms within their house that either are or can be made intelligent and a part of the ecosystem of the living within the house. So from the Internet of Things standpoint, Internet of Everything, and machine-to-machine communications, we're really accelerating our ability to engage and employ active technologies in vivo, not just as an adjunct to human use, but as a part of individual living as well. Certainly, we saw the crypto crash, with especially most noteworthy with FTX and SBF activities of late, just in the last few weeks, a few months really. And it's certainly put a light and spotlight on the fact of the absence of regulation and adult supervision in domains that were a part of the quaintness of the emerging technologies, which are often developed purposefully to avoid sovereign state regulation and sovereign state observation. But at the same time, they increase patterns of risk and exposure to nefarious behaviors as well. And so we're clearly going to see a whole new cast on looking at these patterns of responsibility there. We saw the decline of the shine of the initial wave of NFTs, of non-fungible token activities, and hold on to your Bored Ape NFTs, but don't expect to gain great profit from NFTs as we've first seen them. Toys become tools, as those of you who are my students know, as SOBs know, toys become tools, and so we're always interested in how toys matter. But the technology success doesn't begin or end with the success of the toys. We've seen the strong democratization of AI during this year, especially with the growth in areas of what we would historically lend to perceived creativity and human interaction. So in the art world, AI and art exploded with DALL-E and Midjourney and so forth. We saw near the end of the year a growth with chatbots and ChatGPT, for example, where we have through the history remarkable growth rates of companies or entities growing adoption. In terms of time to 1 million customers or subscribers, Google and Twitter and others have nothing to ChatGPT 3, which developed 1 million subscribers within 5 days. And so we're going to expect to see that kind of resilient herding to technology capabilities at even more rapid experiences than we have historically seen in the past. A part of the crypto casting is blockchain sort of distancing itself from crypto currencies, from the digital currency side of the house, but gaining its own legitimacy. And so we can clearly expect that more blockchain initiatives will grow as we get the need for immutable records and in all different kinds of activities well outside of digital currency structures as well. Rights protection and rights initiatives are growing. The standards growing in different parts of the world are being proliferated, and so we expect to see European standards, Australian standards, and others proliferate even in the U.S. domain as well. And clearly, information markets are changing and will change with this. A lot of the value loss at Facebook was not its name transition to Meta or its diverted investment into metaverse pathways, but often catalyzed by what Apple did in transforming the information market industry that has so relied on advertising. Any firm that has more than 90% of its revenue associated with advertising has a perverse incentive to collect information. And so we're seeing that transition. In terms of certainly on the fictional side, we've seen a lot of rhetoric about Web3 and metaverse activities. As we walk through the walled gardens of some of the metaverse, we see a lot of smoke sculptures and bombast activities that are a disillusionment to so many because there's not much substance or feature behind them. Still, at the same time, there's extraordinary value in augmented reality, virtual reality, and especially virtual worlds when we start thinking about workplace and workplace development. As Julie was talking about remote work, we look to nomad lifestyles growing, both young and old, growing work patterns of nomadic lifestyle. Instead of vacationing somewhere, they may live a year in Costa Rica and then maybe 2 years in Portugal, but still maintain their work activities on here. So there's a lot in transition that we might highlight. Let me stop at this point.
Thank you so much, Ben. You covered, a lot. Technology has been changing at a very, very fast pace. And all of this, I want to save some questions at the end that all going to converge together, but let's maybe cover the last topic and then we'll all reunite. So you obviously covered some things that are going to be affecting naturally the new corporate reality is what we're kind of looking at it. There's a lot of pressure from both the bottom of the pyramid and the top of the pyramid. What we're seeing, the pyramids are flattening, leadership is being put in under, the microscope and adding more responsibility, not less responsibility. We're seeing leaders that are being pushed into areas that were not really, evident previously. For example, ESG, social responsibility, they're becoming quickly part of the leadership career. So a lot of the people that are on this audience are going to probably have to look at these areas as they start growing in their career and expanding both upwards and sideways. So that is another part that we are observing a lot of. Companies are not operating individually as single organisms. They're becoming part of a wider net and of an ecosystem. So as people build on their careers, they cannot just imagine themselves building within one only vertical, but sort of expanding beyond. And so as people start learning more about the knowledge areas that are at the edge of the corporation or organization that they're operating in, we are going to be seeing the people that look at the edges, that are sort of defying, if you will, the knowledge algorithm that's at the edges of them, really becoming more knowledgeable and having, being more successful because they understand the around them. Now, what are we seeing in terms of longevity? Are companies lasting forever? More and more of evidence is coming through that companies are shrinking in terms of their longevity. This affects everybody, right? Because we see shift of talent going from one organization that has possibly gone out of, the economy, and new talent coming with knowledge from previous organization into the ecosystem. So that affects how, the talent is moving around, and we're seeing more and more people building career portfolios rather than a career path. This was something that before wasn't even conceivable. People used to, progress through the ranks. We are seeing so effectively a lot of shifts, sort of squishing and widening of this pyramid. Clearly, we want to hear right now a bit more from the audience. So I'm going to quickly pop in the questions and see what is coming in from the audience. Somebody is asking, Ben, specifically for you, what do you think are the impacts of technology on education? Now, clearly we're in a university here, so this is a very hot topic. So Ben, would you be able to share a little bit more on that?
Yeah, I think education is going to go through profound changes. First of all, because we've been dealing with physical proximity historically, and we focus on matriculation time periods, we've got to get into lifelong learning, lifelong personal development. Our educational system was designed differently. So we will see radical changes in what our educational infrastructure is, and a lifelong and continuous engagement. Universities and schools will have to change the nature of their perception of loyalty and engagement, resources, face-to-face teaching instead of master teaching from the best made available. So there's a major disruption and discontinuity on education. And a part of that is not as a separate entity. It's going to be a part of integrated with the workforce and with the social environment and societal activity. So there's an unbundling. It's a remix era. And so we're going to remix the elements that are a part of life, not just speed up the mess associated with just what is education and what is work. Those are all in transition together.
Thank you, Ben. There is one very interesting question from Kamishra that I think covers all the macro areas that we've been talking about. This concept of, the K-shaped recovery, which has been talked about for a while. But how is this affecting, families? Are some families not getting into the competitive job market, and are companies not investing in efforts to include, hire, and train these families? What are we seeing? And this question obviously can go to any one of you. So whoever feels comfortable answering, this covers all the areas.
Yeah, I can start actually. Could someone pull up the slide? I think it's maybe somewhere around number 22 on the change in labor force participation by age and education. Whoa, there we go. All right, so I think this is pretty close to getting at some of what the question is. And the main thing I guess I would want to draw folks to is looking at this slide. We're plotting the basically how much the workforce has changed since pre-COVID era. So if you take the point at the far left as October 2019, just before everything with COVID hit the face of the earth, and then going out, you're plotting what does the labor force participation look like compared to October 2019 as we move on along the time axis headed towards the right. And the thing that's most concerning that led to the comment, at least that I made, about labor force participation and folks in the K economy is looking at the pink and gold lines, which represent the pink is quote unquote relatively working age people over 25 years with high school but no college education. And the 55-year line in gold, which are the people that basically decided to retire early when COVID hit. And we've seen a significant drop off in these two categories, 2% drop in labor force participation, which is the greatest of any of the categories that we've got on this chart. And really the one that's most concerning are the high school grads that have no college, but they're starting to get older. They're not in their youngest years, most flexible and most willing to learn years. Now, the question asks something, let me see if I can look at it, asks the question of, are companies not investing to include, hire, or train those people? Different companies have different needs, and I can't speak to that. That may be something more for Julie to talk to. And I'm sure that they're going to be making trade-offs based on, does it make more sense to train people that have these qualifications, this type of background, versus those that maybe they can hire in the 20 to 24 year range, or even teenagers who have seen a dramatic spike in labor force participation. You've got concerns about that. You've got concerns about COVID vaccinations that I'm sure we all have our own different perspectives on. But this is where my comment about the K recovery and the fact that we still haven't, as a culture, as a society, haven't recovered from the K recovery post-COVID yet came from. Julie, Ben, Amelia, I welcome any comments y'all would like to add.
So, just to comment on, your statement about training, there are skills that are innate, and they might be, attitudinal skills, or, how somebody communicates, or how they, their work ethic. And then there are skills that we can teach them. And I always tell managers, interviewing managers, look for those things that you can teach someone, and those things that you cannot teach someone. And you want to really focus on the things that you cannot teach them. And so if that means that, you interview somebody or find somebody, identify, somebody who is just a high school grad, if this person has all of the unteachable skills, the things that they need to be born with, and you can teach them how to use a computer, or teach them a software program, or teach them how to put widgets together, then that's going to be a better fit, I believe, oftentimes than somebody who, has some attitude challenges, but has a skill set.
I think we need to move away from just Homo sapien focus and Homo chauvinism. Obviously, from a technology standpoint, the portfolio to me is, when I need skills, those are going to be a pool that have humans are potential in that, but there are other potentials. For example, AI, as far as I'm concerned, AI as a service is going to grow, so that more and more we're going to see the pool of skills needed at any instant will derive from a pool of humans or other system forms. So we've got to move away from the standpoint of a central homo chauvinist focus that looks strictly at human provisioning of skill sets. And another factor, and I don't know if Bill may know, I understand something like by 2032 or 2033, we will have more people over age 65 than the youth side, so that we've got a huge bubble moving forward, even with the Gen Z growth side that will have, because of longevity and other factors, that's changing the work age mix. The multi-generational corporation company is getting more multi-generational. It used to manage 2 or 3 generation portfolio. Now it's got 4 and could have possibly 5 generations in the mix. I don't know how that's going to change some of the corporations as well.
Yeah, maybe just to wrap up, I absolutely agree with Ben that automation is going to be the bane to a lot of this segment of people who have not invested in themselves, maybe as much as some of their peers, as well as taking into account what the overall population mix looks like moving forward. That's going to make for some interesting challenges over the next 20 to 30 years, or even less, in terms of you're going to have 100 million people working and 120 million people who are past their working prime or outside, older than working ages. So I definitely think the changes in culture mix are going to make for an interesting future.
And one quick follow-up question from the audience that is interesting, again, combining these points. Denise is asking, with respect to the need to hire good talent and the ongoing layoff for repositioning purposes, there is a great amount of talent shift between companies, industries, but there are also losses. So who are they, and what is the remedial process we should be looking at? So maybe this, I don't know if this question is, a little bit for everybody, but maybe Julie, if you want to sort of kick off a little bit there.
I'm still on mute. I was just answering another question, so I'm going to go up to Denise's question. Ongoing layoff or repositioning purposes. So, so the question as it's written, it'd probably be helpful, Amelia, if you repeat what you said in terms of the question.
Sure. I think the question is addressing what is happening to the talent that's being lost. How can we remedy what's happening with the talent that's actually being lost over there? What can happen? How can we reshift that? Whether it's a matter of training, a matter of engaging differently. What are some of the trends, I guess, we're seeing in re-engaging this talent?
Yeah. So what I mentioned when I was presenting the HR piece is that I think managers have to get creative in how they're recruiting and in how they're identifying, resourcing talent. And so, a lot of the talent can come from, like I mentioned, people who have the right personality, cultural fit, ambition, those types of skills. And then there's specific skill sets that we need to train them on. We're seeing clients that are putting employees through training programs. Like, we just hired somebody, not my company, but a client company who's going to spend 2 years in school in, the university. And once he completes that, then his full salary actually kicks in. And the company is sponsoring his degree. And so it's really kind of a bigger question. There's a lot of opportunity, but I think you have to think outside of the box.
Great. So there is a question from VJ. He is asking, how can companies, corporates catalyze in the ESG agenda? So since there is a lot needed beyond just the tick the box approach that is easy to target. And that's a phenomenal question, because I think we're all becoming sort of tangibly involved in this arena. One of the things that we are seeing more is obviously leaders involved, not just at making those changes individually within their company, but getting more involved in the ecosystems all around, getting involved with NGOs, getting involved, putting their funds where their voice is. Essentially, we all observed, the effect of the Patagonia CEO basically injecting all those funds in the ESG agenda. Do we think that more CEOs are going to put that same energy in terms of going from voice to funds? What do you all think? Are you seeing more energy coming into injecting, response, and not just in sort of putting out value propositions? Ben, I see you're.
Yeah, I have,
Yes.
I start sort of cynical on this, because of here, I look at just the case of SBF and all the shallow rhetoric that has gone on, especially it used to be perceived as shallow coming from the boomers and Gen X community. And the rhetoric picked up certainly by the late millennials and Gen Z. And you have with SBF and the FTX scenario and debacle, the surfacing and identity of everything that was expressed as altruistic capitalism and directed being only surface talk. And so I'm a little skeptical on the ESG as on one side formulaic, and on the other side as being pure rhetoric. And I think we celebrate the Icon Award and trophy stories of Patagonia and a few others, but I want everybody to live that and have living measures, in vivo measures, not annual measures. We're in not a period of not episodic audits, and I think accounting's changing away from annual audits as we move into continuous audits. I want to see that same thing for ESG. Other than that, I have no opinion.
Great, thank you. And I know we're literally at top of hour. I am going to hand it over to Tammy, who's going to have some closing remarks. Thank you all.
So thank you, Amelia. Thank you, Ben. Thank you, Julie. Thank you, Bill. A lot of really great information, and even more awesome questions that were presented during this session. So I really think that based on all of the questions that we got and the topics, that we could probably have a separate webinar session on each of your topics that were shared. Thank you again for presenting, and Amelia for your moderation. Really appreciate it. I just want to take a few minutes just to talk about looking ahead. So coming up in the winter, this is again our last business over breakfast for this year, for 2022, but kicking off in 2023, our first one will take place on the first Thursday of January. That's January the 5th. And it will be on intentional conversations, the science behind effective communication skills. So if any of you have been on any past Business Over Breakfast with Jamie Turner, Jamie is going to be leading this webinar session for us. So we do hope that you are able to kick off your new year with Jamie as he talks about the science behind effective communication skills. And would love to also talk about some of our short courses that we're featuring coming up. We do have Business of Healthcare Certificate. This includes 4 MBA courses that are specifically around the topic of healthcare. All 4 courses do lead to a certificate, but you're also welcome to take individual courses as well. These courses will provide you with credit towards an MBA if you apply and are accepted. There's various application deadlines, so please feel free to reach out to me for more information on those courses. And again, mentioning Jamie Turner, he will be leading our Business Over Breakfast on the 5th, but he will also be presenting his unspoken rules of leadership during the month of February. This will be taught on 4 Thursdays during February and for an hour over lunchtime. So again, please join us for Unspoken Rules to hear more from Jamie Turner. And finally, we do have our managerial leadership program. And this is a program that is for managers. It really gives you helpful information of how to lead, how to deal with stressful times, how to really communicate effectively with your teams. There's 2 modules for this. It kicks off on March the 13th through the 15th. Take a little break, and then we come back for the last 2 days in April the 12th and 13th. So those are our featured short courses. Really just want to wish everybody a happy holidays. Thank you all for joining us this year. There's a lot that we shared, and we look forward to you coming back in the new year in 2023. Cheers to a happy new year, and thank you all again for joining us. Have a great day.